$750 million. That much cost the hotel, in which never, not once, nobody slept. 105 floors, higher than the Eiffel Tower. It has been building almost 40 years, and during all this time, inside not overnighted not a single guest, not a single one. The country gave for it 2% of its entire economy, and then simply erased it from maps, as if it isn't there. Today, the most expensive things, which people built and threw away. The ship, where dined presidents and Marilyn Monroe. Soon it will be sunk. Intentionally, the city of mansions, which alive swallows the desert. A cannon the length of 1.5 football fields, its creator received 5 bullets at the door of his own apartment. The killer was not found to this day. Together, all this cost tens of billions of dollars. But the biggest loss, at the very end of the list, the story about how one country with its own hands buried a machine for 10 billion and crossed out from science an entire generation of discoveries. It ends with the phrase about the revenge of the sea students. And when you understand what this means, it will not be funny. Welcome to the channel for the richest.
Luxury life.
The Sanszi flying saucers. The workers demolished the stone dragon at the entrance to the construction site. It interfered with widening the road. A few weeks later at the site, people began to die. Northern Taiwan, an hour drive from Taipei. In 1978, a local developer began building on the shore of the strait a resort for American officers. Not a hotel, not villas, dozens of round capsule houses on supports after the model of the Finnish project Futuro. From a distance, the settlement resembled a squadron of flying saucers which had landed on the cliffs right by the sea. After 2 years, everything stopped. The official reason is boring. The money ran out, the key investor went bankrupt, but the locals told something else. The dragon in Chinese tradition is a guardian spirit. To destroy it means to invite disaster. And after the demolition of the sculpture, workers one by one began to die in accidents. Several people took their own lives without visible reasons. People stopped coming to shifts. Rumors spread that the land was cursed, that under the foundation lay the bones of a 17th century Dutch soldier. No one went to check. The investors left, and the saucers stood on the cliffs for almost 30 years, 15 times longer than they were built. SS United States, February 2025. The embankments of Philadelphia are packed with people. The police close the bridges. Tugs slowly pull along the river a rusty ship. People wave to it. Some cry. This is the SS United States, the fastest ocean liner which ever built people. In 1952, it cost $80 million, more than $900 million in today's money. Almost half was contributed by the US government. And not out of generosity. Under a secret project, the ship in a few days turned into a military transport for 14,000 soldiers. Its maximum speed the Navy classified. They argue about it to this day, but almost certainly the liner accelerated to 43.5 miles per hour. Over water. In its very first voyage in the summer of 1952, it crossed the Atlantic in 3 days, 10 hours, and 40 minutes, and took the record from the legendary Queen Mary immediately with a margin of 10 hours. That record stands still today. For the sake of speed, more aluminum was put into the hull than into any construction project in history, just to lighten it. On these decks walked 4 American presidents: Marilyn Monroe, Marlon Brando. In 1969, everything ended. Jet airplanes made ocean liners unnecessary. The ship changed owners. In Turkey, asbestos was removed from it for years, and in 1996 it was brought to Philadelphia to Pier number 82. There it stood for 29 years. One dockage cost $1,000 a week, and that's at the lower end. Over all the years at the pier, more than $1.5 million had accrued. $1.5 million for the right to rust, and the best view of the fastest ship on the planet opened from the parking lot of a furniture store. The ship's Conservancy Foundation raised money, attracted celebrities, sued the pier owner, all in vain. In October 2024, Okaloosa County from Florida bought the liner in order to sink it. By the end of 2026, the ship will lie on the bottom 25 miles from the coast of Florida and become the largest artificial reef in the world. The corals don't care what records it holds. And the next city, people abandoned in a matter of months. The furniture remained standing exactly where it stood. Kolmanskop. In 1908, a worker, Zacharias Lawala, was cleaning the railroad tracks from sand in southern Africa. In the dump, something sparkled. He picked up a small stone and took it to his boss, a German named August Stauck. It was a diamond. Then events took off. The German administration declared the entire area a restricted zone. Diamonds lay here right on the surface. Prospectors crawled on all fours with jam jars and picked up stones with their bare hands. From 1908 to 1914, 5 million carats were extracted from these sands. That's roughly 1 ton of diamonds. Several hundred grams every single day, 6 years straight. On this money, right in the middle of the Namib Desert, the German town of Kolmanskop grew. By per capita income, it was one of the richest places on the planet at that time. Mansions lined up along the street, which was called Millionaires Avenue. Casino, bowling alley, theater where opera troupes were brought by steamship from Europe. The hospital received the first X-ray machine in the entire southern hemisphere. True, they mostly X-rayed workers, those suspected of swallowing diamonds. And there was also an ice factory here, and fresh lemonade was served in the houses, in the middle of the desert. In the 1910s, in 1928, a richer deposit was found 300 kilometers to the south. The exodus was instantaneous. People left and abandoned everything. Furniture, wallpaper on the walls, curtains on the windows. By 1956, no one remained in the city, and then the sand entered. It poured through broken windows and grew year after year, first knee-deep, then waist-deep. In the ballroom, dunes rose. Today, tourists walk through rooms where sand has grown to the ceiling and buried iron beds beneath itself. Somewhere there under the dunes, tram rails still lie. Where exactly, no one knows anymore. Sand at least works slowly. Money can disappear overnight. Sathorn Unique Tower. For many years, entry to the most famous building in Bangkok cost exactly 1 bribe. The guard took the money and turned away, and hundreds of people over the weekend would climb on foot to the 49th floor of the skyscraper that lacks half its walls. The Sathorn Unique Tower was conceived as luxury housing in the financial heart of the city. 49 floors. Investment: 1,800 million baht, which is about $70 million. Construction went from 1990 and by the summer of 1997 was 80% complete, and then the Thai baht collapsed. The Asian crisis froze more than 300 construction sites at once in Bangkok. The bank that financed the tower went bust in a few weeks. There was also a second misfortune, a personal one. Back in 1993, the owner of the project, architect Rangsan Torsawan, was arrested. The accusation sounded terrible: conspiracy to murder the president of the Supreme Court of Thailand. The case dragged on for 15 years. In 2008, he was found guilty. In 2010, acquitted on appeal. Management, meanwhile, passed to his son, and he refused to sell the tower for less than the amount that would cover the debts to all the first buyers of the apartments. A buyer on such terms does not exist to this day, but the tower began to live its own life. The basement was flooded, and locals introduced fish there to fight mosquitoes. Over time, in the darkness under the skyscraper, 3,000 fish splashed. And at the top, on open balconies without railings, illegal tourists watched the sunrise over the Chao Phraya River, over the golden spires of the temple far below. In 2017, a horror movie was filmed in these corridors. Now the entrances are welded shut, the territory is patrolled, violators face arrest. The ghost tower has been frozen for 29 years. 4 times longer than it was built, 80% complete, 0 residents. The next object, American intelligence for several years could not even identify. Analysts looked at the images and did not believe them. The Caspian Sea Monster. In the late 60s, an American spy satellite photographed over the Caspian an object that baffled intelligence. The photograph looked like a montage. It was not a montage. In the picture was something with stubby wings, 10 jet engines, and a fuselage as long as the largest airliner of that time. The hull clearly ship-like, but in the next images the object was flying. Very low, a couple of meters above the water. Still, it was flying. In secret reports, it was given a name: the Caspian Sea Monster. The Americans photographed an chronoplan, a machine that rides on a cushion of compressed air between the wing and the water. The Soviet Union had been building such things in secret for many years. The mock-up ship, abbreviated KM, was the largest, 92 meters in length, 500 tons of weight. At the time of its construction in 1966, it was the heaviest aircraft on the planet. 500 tons raced over the sea below the windows of the second floor, raised a wall of spray behind it, and were not reflected on most radars. The Navy tried the machine for landing troops and missile strikes. 15 years of tests ended in 1980 with a pilot error. The monster crashed into the sea, stayed afloat for a week, and sank. They didn't raise it. Too heavy, too broken. It still lies at the bottom of the Caspian. But the program did not die. In 1987, the Ekranoplan Loon entered service. Longer than the largest passenger plane in the world, with 6 anti-ship missiles on its back. It was built to chase and sink aircraft carriers at a speed of 310 miles per hour. And then the Soviet Union ended. The Loon rusted for 30 years at the pier of a military base. In 2020, it was towed to the shore near Derbent to a future museum. On the way, it ran aground. It lay on the beach for 2 years. Now it is being repainted for a museum that has not yet opened. There is no second such machine in the world, and it seems there never will be. The monster was ruined by one pilot error. The next project was doomed even on paper. Mirabel Airport. A taxi from the new airport to Montreal costs $75 at 1970s prices. This alone should have been a warning. In 1975, Canada opened Mirabel, an airport that they planned to make the largest on Earth. For it, they took almost 154 square miles of land and evicted 3,500 farming families. Just the land expropriation cost $140 million, 8 times higher than the estimate. The terminal costs more than $1 billion. In the plans, 6 runways, 6 terminals, 50 million passengers a year. They built the first phase. More was never needed. Never. The planners drew the future with a ruler. If passenger traffic is growing, it will grow forever, and everyone will fly supersonic, and that needs long runways away from housing. The future disagreed. The airport was 34 miles from the city. The promised high-speed railway was never built. Why? No one clearly explained. There were only 6 boarding gates. Passengers were taken to planes by special lounge buses, plus 40 minutes to every departure. Airlines hated Mirabel. Passengers too. The farmers sued the state for the land taken from them. Airlines fought for the right to fly away from here forever. And Montreal, meanwhile, was losing to Toronto. Business and money were flowing out of the city. In 1997, international flights returned to the old airport, the very one that was supposedly suffocating from overload when Mirabel was conceived. The last passenger flight departed in 2004 to Paris. Then the empty terminal for 10 years consumed $3 million a year just for maintenance. In 2014, they began demolishing it. The demolition cost another $15 million. $1 billion to build, $15 million to demolish. The runways remain. They are now used to test passenger aircraft. And around them again are cornfields, on the land of those same families who were once told to leave. The next place cannot be demolished. It is burning. Centralia, Pennsylvania, 1981. 12-year-old Todd Domboski walks through his grandmother's yard, and the ground under him collapses. A hole more than 3 feet wide swallows him up to his armpits. From below, scalding steam bursts out. The boy is pulled out by his hands by his cousin. Todd survived, and under that yard in the depths, his hometown was burning. Rewind 19 years. May 1962. 5 volunteer firefighters of the town of Centralia set fire to the municipal landfill. A routine matter. They did it every year to clear the trash. But the landfill sat in a former mine pit, and in its bottom was an unsealed hole, a direct path into the labyrinth of abandoned coal tunnels. No one knew about this hole. The fire went down, found a coal seam, and grabbed hold of it. It is still burning. According to experts' estimates, it will burn for another 250 years. They tried to suffocate the fire many times. They dug trenches, pumped water and clay underground. The fire bypassed any obstacle. The network of tunnels under the city was never mapped in full. By the late 70s, residents began getting poisoned by carbon monoxide in their own bedrooms. In 1979, the mayor discovered that the gasoline in his underground tank had heated to almost 180 degrees Fahrenheit. No further explanation is needed. In 1983, federal engineers summarized: extinguishing would cost about $600 million and destroy almost the entire town. Congress allocated $42 million for the buyout of houses. Buying an entire city turned out to be 14 times cheaper than saving it. Most left. In 1992, the state forcibly took all buildings, but fewer than 10 stubborn individuals sued for the right to live out their lives in their houses. After their deaths, the state will take everything. Today, about 5 people live in Centralia. The streets are in place, the name signs are standing, but there are no houses, only empty lots where grass tears through the asphalt. And under all this, the fire burns indifferently, which 5 volunteers ignited in 1962. The next hole in the ground they dug for 44 years straight, and helicopters are still afraid of it. The Mir Mine. Flying over this hole is forbidden. The air above the crater swirls into a funnel and sucks helicopters downward. Therefore, the sky here is closed. Yakutia, the city of Mirny. In winter, it's minus 58 degrees Fahrenheit here. Steel cracks from the frost, tires crumble like cookies. In June 1955, 3 geologists sent a telegram to Moscow with a coded phrase, "We lit the pipe of peace." This was code. It meant that a kimberlite pipe had been found, a vein packed with diamonds. They began digging in 1957. In conditions in which one cannot dig, 7 months of winter, permafrost paralyzed equipment, houses in the settlement were put on stilts so they wouldn't sink into the thawed ground. And the processing plant had to be built 12 miles away. No closer stable ground could be found. And still the mine became one of the most productive in history. At its peak in the 60s, it produced 10 million carats a year. That is about 2 tons of diamonds, over 11 pounds every day. 1 in every 5 stones was gem quality. Over the life of the mine, stones worth approximately $13 billion were extracted from here. This flow even frightened the world diamond monopoly. The De Beers Company, which controlled the diamond trade across the planet, realized if Soviet stones flooded the market freely, prices would collapse everywhere. And in the midst of the Cold War, the capitalist quietly came to an agreement with the Soviet Union to buy its diamonds at agreed prices, wholesale. For decades, the company that invented the most famous advertising slogan in diamond history effectively subsidized the Soviet treasury. The full terms of that deal have not been disclosed to this day. The pit was dug for 44 years and closed in 2001. It became impossible to extract stone from the surface any deeper. The underground tunnels lasted until 2004. Then they were flooded. What remained was a crater more than 1,700 feet deep, a town of 37,000 residents nearby, and a no-fly zone. The hole in Siberia at least brought billions. The next building didn't return a single dollar, and is unlikely to. The Ryugyong Hotel. For decades, on the official maps of Pyongyang, the tallest building in the city was absent. State newspapers did not mention it once. Tourists stood in the squares, looked at the concrete pyramid 330 meters high, and could not get an answer from the guides as to what it even was. The Ryugyong Hotel began to be built in 1987 out of pure jealousy. A year earlier, a South Korean company had completed the tallest hotel in the world, and the North needed one taller. 105 floors, taller than the Eiffel Tower. 3 concrete wings converge at the top at an angle of 75 degrees, and 5 rotating restaurants were to crown it all. The construction consumed about $750 million, 2% of the annual economy of the entire country. 2 cents from every dollar earned by the state went into one unfinished hotel. By the opening of the World Festival of Youth in 1989, they didn't make it. In 1992, the concrete frame reached its design height. And then, the Soviet Union, the country's main benefactor, collapsed. Famine began. The economy shrank by almost half. Construction stopped. The tower crane froze at the top of the pyramid and stood there for 16 years. It was visible from any district of the capital, a monument on a monument. The authorities chose the most North Korean way to solve the problem. They declared that the building did not exist. Only in 2008 did construction revive. An Egyptian company began dressing the concrete in glass. By 2011, the pyramid from afar began to resemble a finished skyscraper. The opening was promised in 2012. Then, in 2013, a European hotel chain announced it would occupy the upper floors and quietly disappeared from the project. And in 2018, a giant LED screen was hung on one of the facets, and the entire facade became a propaganda television. One of the few who was inside described what he saw briefly. In the lobby, bare cement. Of all the elevators, one works. A service one, slow, with an elevator operator. On the 99th floor, there is nothing to see. In 2024, the authorities began looking for a casino operator ready to finish the hotel in exchange for future revenue. By early 2026, no takers were found. But the screen shines every night over a city where electricity is regularly cut off. The hotel at least killed no one. The creator of the next project was shot at the door of his own apartment. Project Babylon. On the evening of March 22, 1990, Gerald Bull inserted the key into the lock of his Brussels apartment. Into his back and the back of his head entered 5 bullets from a pistol with a silencer. When the police arrived, the key was still in the lock. In the victim's briefcase lay $20,000 in cash. They were not touched. Bull was one of the best artillery designers on the planet. All his life, he was driven by one idea: to launch satellites into space not with a rocket, but with a shot from a giant cannon. Cheap, and by his calculations, quite feasible. For decades, he knocked on the doors of Western governments. He was refused by all. And in 1988, Saddam Hussein agreed and paid $25 million. Thus, Project Babylon was born. First, they built a prototype, Baby Babylon, a barrel with a caliber of 13¾ inches, a length of 151 feet, weighing 102 tons. It was assembled on a hillside in Iraq and successfully tested. Next came Big Babylon, a gun with a barrel length of 512 feet and a width of 1 yard. An adult person could easily fit through such a barrel. Total weight 2,100 tons. To prevent the barrel from collapsing under its own weight, a steel frame higher than a 30-story building was required. Range 621 miles. The gun could reach Israel and central Iran right from where it stood. An Iraqi defector later spoke of a space-related plan as well, to fire projectiles that explode in orbit and coat enemy spy satellites with a sticky mass, blind them. The barrel parts were ordered from factories in Britain and Germany. In the documents, they were listed as petrochemical equipment. The manufacturers either didn't know what they were making or preferred not to ask. Then Bull was shot. The killer was not found. Charges were never brought against anyone. Most often, Israeli intelligence is named. In the list of versions, Iran and the CIA, Big Babylon remained unfinished. After the Gulf War, UN inspectors found and destroyed everything that had been assembled. Several sections of the barrel now stand in a British museum. Steel tubes 1 yard in diameter, all that remains of the man who wanted to shoot into space. Buran. On November 15, 1988, a spacecraft landed at the airfield in the Kazakh steppe in which there was not a single person. It made 2 orbits around the Earth, returned from space, entered the approach for landing by itself in a strong crosswind, and touched the runway 9 feet from the center line. 9 feet. After 2 orbits around the planet, the computer landed it in a way that the best pilots don't land. This was Buran, the Soviet answer to the American shuttle and the most expensive space program in the history of the USSR. The military was convinced. The cargo bay of the American shuttle, the size of a railway car, was created for weapons in orbit, so they needed their own. More than 1,200 organizations and 86 departments were put to work. At its peak, 150,000 people, 20 billion rubles, by various conversions, from $16 to $30 billion in today's money. To carry Buran from the factory to the Cosmodrome, a separate aircraft was built, the An-225, the largest in aviation history, 1 transport for 1 passenger. Buran differed from the American shuttle in one main thing. It had no main engines of its own. It was lifted into space by a separate rocket, Energia, but it could fly completely autonomously. The shuttle was not designed for automatic landing on purpose. American engineers believed that a human should hold the controls. The Soviet computer did without a human, and did everything flawlessly. The 1988 flight was supposed to be the first of many. A year later, the Berlin Wall fell. 3 years later, the country disappeared. The military decided that the threat had passed, the money ran out, and in 1993, Yeltsin closed the program. Buran was rolled into the giant assembly building at Baikonur and locked up. The test pilots who had trained for years for manned flights never flew anywhere. On May 12, 2002, the roof of the building, 10 years without repair, collapsed after rains. 8 workers died. The only flown Buran was destroyed under the debris along with them. Its remains were sold as scrap metal, by weight, like rusty pipes. The amount of the deal was never disclosed. And the second ship, 97% ready, still stands in the neighboring hangar under a layer of dust, bird droppings, and graffiti. Almost everything in this list was abandoned because it failed. Buran was abandoned because it succeeded, and the country that built it ended before it did. And now, the story about how one country voluntarily gave another a decade of scientific future, and about the revenge of the sea students. The Superconducting Super Collider. Under the farm field south of Dallas lie 14 miles of concrete tunnel. The tunnel is flooded with groundwater. 17 shafts that led to it from the surface are sealed. Above, a chemical plant operates, and few of its employees suspect what lies beneath their feet. And beneath their feet lies the most powerful scientific instrument in the history of mankind that never was. The Superconducting Super Collider was announced in 1987 by President Reagan personally. A ring 54 miles long, 3 times larger than the Large Hadron Collider in Geneva, collision energy almost 3 times higher. 4,700 superconducting magnets, each 56 feet long. 528,000 gallons of liquid helium to keep them at a temperature colder than outer space. The ring was to pass under the lake and lands of 3 Texas counties. The town of Waxahachie beat out candidates from 36 states, won the right to host the machine, and rebuilt its entire life around it. Physicists from around the world moved their families to the Texas prairies. By the fall of 1993, 2,000 people had dug 14 miles of the ring, with the same equipment that had dug the Channel Tunnel. On October 21, 1993, Congress voted against. The budget had grown from $5 billion to $10 billion. The Cold War had ended. There was no longer anyone to prove scientific superiority to. 282 votes against 143. Clinton asked Congress to keep the project, but 9 days later signed the law to close it and called it a serious loss for science. The money went to a budget competitor, the International Space Station. The project director, Roy Schwitters, told the New York Times that the collider had become a victim of the revenge of the sea students, those who didn't understand physics in school and grew up to vote on it. Now, about exactly what was lost. Physicists who worked on the project say without reservation, this machine would have found the Higgs boson, the particle that explains why matter has mass at all, 10 years earlier than the Europeans. The European Collider confirmed it in 2012. The Nobel Prize for this was announced on July 4, 2013, on U.S. Independence Day, and it went to 2 European theorists for a discovery made on a European machine. In Waxahachie, the irony was appreciated, but the most expensive thing here is not even the 10 lost years. The energy of the Texas machine would have left the Geneva one far behind. What happens to matter at such energies, no one on the planet knows. Not a single existing machine reaches that level. The answers perhaps lay in the 14 miles of flooded tunnel under Texas. There it is, the revenge of the sea students in full glory. Not a witticism of an offended scientist, a hole in human knowledge the size of an entire generation. And this hole has an exact date of birth, October 21st, 1993. Write in the comments everything you think about this and subscribe to the channel for the richest. Here is about luxury, wealth, and the life of the most influential people on the planet. Thanks for watching, and right now watch our previous episodes, which have already appeared on your screen.